You are witnessing history, folks. Our esteemed Prime Minister has unveiled a national housing strategy that he calls the most comprehensive and ambitious housing plan ever seen in Canada. Well, it may be comprehensive and it certainly is ambitious, but will it work? I'll dive into that today as well. Have a special treat for you today as mortgage guru Vince Gaetano will join me in the discussion. And I see him popping in right now. So Vince and I are here to take your questions, as always, right here, right now on Live at Lunch. Thank you so much for joining me. As Vince joins us here, there's a couple of quotes from Justin Trudeau that I'd like to point out here. He says the best way to make home prices more affordable is to increase supply and quickly. Well, that's a change, eh? Vince, they had more focus on demand in previous announcements, and now they're kind of switched gears to supply. What do you think about all that?
Well, first of all, Lambros, it's been a busy morning fielding calls from a number of people dealing with questions about the budget yesterday. Yeah, I think what's loud and clear here is that we have a rudderless boat, not knowing what's going on and how to handle this. I really think that the budget was clear that capital investment in this country is not wanted, and we could very well see a flight to other jurisdictions that will respect it and give it its return. I think on the supply and demand side of real estate, which I think I just heard part of the question because I was just jumping into the live, but do you want to repeat that? Because I didn't hear the front
certainly.
end.
When Justin Trudeau unveiled the housing plan, he made mention that the best way to make home prices more affordable is to increase supply, which I found quite odd because in past announcements and policies, they were focusing on squashing demand more so to control the housing crisis. So now they've kind of switched gears to supply. Is that what you find as well?
Well, there's some inconsistencies, right? Because you make some valid points. They brought in tighter measures to ease up on the demand side. Yeah. Now they're saying they got to supply close to 4 million homes by 2031.
Correct.
I don't know how they're going to do it because in looking at the budget documents, both pre and post the announcement, there's only about $100 million into training of skilled trades and apprenticeship programs. I think it was 10 million into skilled trades investment, and then 90 million into apprenticeship programs. Right. And I think that's where the real problem is. I really think that at the end of the day, whatever homes you plan on building need to be built by people. And, in watching a couple interviews this morning, one being by the CEO of Mattamy Homes, he made it very clear there's a lack of skilled trades. There's a lack of folks able to build these homes that the government is desperately trying to let people think are going to be built overnight. And it's just not going to happen. And one of the points that was made as well is the amount of time to get permits is still a challenge in this country. Yeah. And nothing is going to get built fast. And anybody who thinks that there's going to be homes built in rapid fashion are just fooling themselves. Right. This is a government that over the last number of years has reset the forecast that it was presenting to Canadians, and they've always spent by huge margins, and it's just it's getting tired. And now you're going after capital gains, and I talked to a few developers who said I got no incentive now to build. Like if I'm going to get taxed at a higher rate, I'm going to use my capital in another way. I'm not going to do it here. Right. I'm going to go south of the border. Right. I'm going to invest elsewhere where my capital will be respected and I am able to earn a better rate of return.
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well. But correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't south of the border, isn't it 100% taxed, the capital gains?
No,
Because
it's
that's what they
not.
were.
In certain jurisdictions, it's less, and sometimes if you reinvest your capital, you can get to roll it over into another project.
Hmm.
So there's significant advantages, and all I've heard in the last 18 hours since the budget has been presented is, where am I going to move to? I, I,
Right, right.
I don't want to be here anymore. And what's really interesting is this government seems to think, and this is what Trudeau said, that quote unquote, the economy is doing better than expected. Our economy is growing. Like,
Yeah.
this is an out and out lie. Everybody is worse off than they were 8 years
Hmm.
ago. And this reminds me of the environment minister, former environment minister, Catherine McKenna, who was caught in a drunken stupor in a bar saying, if you say it loud and enough times, people will start believing
Yeah.
it. And this
Yes.
is what this government has done. And I just don't see us getting through this. And one of the problems I have, Lambros, is I really think we have opportunities. And where I think it all starts is you have to start offering training programs for skilled trades in high
Mhm.
school. You cannot um, ostracize students who want to go into a skilled trade, which is what has been happening over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
The university stream has always been favored over skilled trades, and it's marginalized people to thinking that they were not worthy. And 30 years later, we have a shortage of skilled trades because you push people into the university stream, and everybody's got a liberal arts degree working at Starbucks serving
Yeah.
coffee, right?
Yeah.
So you now have this gap. You have a large percentage of skilled trades retiring
Hmm.
in the next 5 to 7 years, and there's nobody to replace them.
Yeah.
And
No, that's a valid point, and that's why I'm pleasantly surprised that they did bring up skilled trades in this budget, which I hadn't seen before, and it may have been there before, but I don't remember it. So not only from what you mentioned, a high school program, I think this is targeting high school students to enter the skilled trades, so they're investing 90 million to an apprenticeship service, and also they're inviting, you know, foreigner skilled trades to come in as well, and with less paperwork, less red tape. So the theory is that they're going to acknowledge whatever training they have elsewhere and bring them here and help them build. But that does not raise some red flags? Like, are you concerned that the quality of their training will match what's here? What do you think about that?
well, there's enough red tape to slow them down to make mistakes.
Hmm. For sure.
Like,
Yeah.
so I'm not too worried about that. I just think that, with young people today looking for opportunity, I think those folks that were born and raised here should give them that opportunity to be a skilled trade as well.
Yeah.
And this is where I think they get passed up over international trades.
Hmm.
And I'm not discounting the value that immigrants can provide us, but at the same time, I think it could have a dual benefit if you have two streams of trades coming in and offering anybody that wants to go into the skilled trades free education
Yeah.
to do so. And we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need carpenters, we need people that can help build these homes that everybody thinks is going to just happen overnight. It's
Yeah.
not. And now that you have uh, homeowners that have the opportunity to build multi-units within their dwelling, and now facing a capital gains tax that's more than what was expected post June 25th, what incentive do people have to build multi-units
Yeah.
and increase the density on existing real estate?
Hmm.
I would think people are going to say, you know what? I don't know if I really want to do that. I don't want to participate
Yeah.
in adding supply when I'm going to get penalized.
Right.
So, uh, this whole strategy seems so hypocritical and contrasting in many ways. Like
Right.
it just doesn't make sense. Like it seems like they're trying to appease to different voter blocks,
That's true. Yeah.
and and a housing plan needs to be generational in its projection. It needs to be long term,
Hmm.
not election period type plans
That's right.
that only fit their term in office. Okay, and this is what's happening with these governments. Like I was talking to an old friend of mine. He worked. He was a lawyer and he worked on the free trade agreement during the Mulroney years, and he talked about how he lacks hope in the generation that is today, because he said governments back in the day of Mulroney and Chrétien, they governed. They were put in office and they governed every day. He was at the Ministry of Trade
Hmm.
every day working with bureaucrats and understanding the issues of the day. Every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, there'd be a minister's meeting, and every portfolio would have to report to the minister on what's going on in that file so that he's ready to talk about any issue in the House of Commons that week. Today, we have ministers that don't even go to the ministry. We have a finance minister, a part-time finance minister, that is, who works from home in Toronto and is probably in Ottawa at the Ministry of Finance probably a handful of times this year. So how can she have a finger on the pulse?
Mm.
These governments today of all stripes are campaign focused and election day ready.
Yeah.
All they care about is elections. They don't care about governing. And that's the problem. All this stuff is all shit that's going to happen later. There's nothing happening now. And it's to entice voters to vote for them and keep them in power.
Yeah. No,
And that's a
I
sad
agree with that.
reality.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. It's all partisan focused and election focused. And it's even clear in this budget as well, because a lot of the um, target is younger people. So they're trying to get the younger votes by, introducing this renters bill of rights and things like that, rights, which it's not going to go anywhere, I don't think, in my opinion.
Well,
Um,
if you have an investor that wants to build multi-units or
yeah.
improve the density from 1 unit to 4, which is now available in the city of Toronto and some other parts of GTA, and probably coming in other areas as well. If there's a renter's bill of rights and everything's weighted to a renter, including a fund available to renters to sue their landlords, what motivation does an investor have to build more units and then have to face all these obstacles for them to be profitable?
100%.
Like
Yeah.
this isn't a charity, right? This isn't the church of landlords where we have to be subservient and be stuck in an environment that only throws darts at us. It's got to be a mutually beneficial relationship, one with respect for each other. And that goes for landlords too. I think you have to have a welcoming approach to your tenant. And if you're respectful and you want them to enjoy your unit, you're going to get respect back.
Yeah.
And I think there's been so much animosity built up by the media, by government about this issue, that it needs to stop. And I think we got to get back onto the track of what the issue is. We need more homes built. We have to encourage people to invest in building these homes. And you don't do it by hitting them over the head and putting all these obstacles in front of them. It's just not going to work.
That's right.
And when you have a government who's in charge of the turnstile of immigration and just continuously bring us a tsunami of people without any infrastructure and social services to support them, it's just bad government. It's bad planning, and we need people. We need adults in the room. That's what we need.
Yeah. So Someone asks here, Pina Trozo, this renter's bill of rights hasn't passed yet. No, it has not, Pina. It's just it's still a theory, unless Vince, you have more information on it. But it reminds me of the buyer's bill of rights that they proposed back in 2022. Vince, I remember you and I having a conversation back then as well when they at that election platform. They brought in this buyer's bill of rights that was going to eliminate blind bidding and all these other things, and that still hasn't materialized either. So
Well,
don't hold your breath, Pina.
well,
Yeah,
I'll reference the Grocers Code of Conduct that's been in the works for about 4 years. They still can't agree on it. So, you've heard people say grocers have to treat the public a little bit more fairly. Well, that's still in progress. So,
yeah.
to your point, Lambros, don't hold your breath.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the other good thing that I saw, we'll call it good, whatever, good is a relative term, because I know you've been a proponent of cutting red tape, in the government. So they do mention that as well. So they talked about, increasing the skilled trades workers, but they've also made a number of, I guess, things here that are going to try to eliminate red tape, including, passing the buck to the provincial governments as well by, I guess, dangling this infrastructure fund or something as long as they, cut down red tape. And there's some other things in here like, increasing infrastructure for water and waste, allowing for units to be built on a lot and things like that. So, do you think that goes far enough into eliminating red tape?
No,
No.
I just don't see it happening. I think government can't get out of the way themselves.
Yeah.
Like we have created so much fat at the bureaucratic
Yeah.
level that it's almost laughable. I'll give you a couple of examples. I work with a number of investors and contractors. I also run a MIC, which is a mortgage investment fund. We do
Right
construction
on.
loans for people improving homes, and we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of these properties being repurposed from single family to
Right.
4 units.
Right.
And I'll give you a couple of examples that just happened in the last couple of weeks. We had a proposal that was submitted for zoning review
Okay.
for a garden suite and an interior alteration from single family to triplex. And it was rejected because there was too many colors on the plans.
Too many colors
And
on the
on
plan.
the on the drawings. So the architect's stamp was in blue, and there was a couple noted lines in the document, and it was rejected. So it has to start over again. And this was the same architect that submitted previous plans that went to another zoning examiner,
Oh,
right? Another permit examiner. So it all depends on who you get. And
yeah.
and this is a city, the city of Toronto. This is a city that is in desperate need of rental
Mhm.
units. Okay, and they're rejecting drawings because there's multiple colors on it. Now, there's probably a reason for it. Sure.
Wow.
Okay. But why would one examiner be okay with it and another
Yeah.
not? And they will. And having spoken to a number of people anonymously that work in the city, their biggest issue is everybody needs to get back in the office.
Yeah.
Okay, all these new inspectors and analysts that are approving these permits have to get back in the office because their supervisors are in the office, and all they do today working from home is email each other back and
Right.
forth, and hopefully they catch each other in between walking their dog, running chores, and picking their kids up at school.
Mhm.
Nobody's working a full week.
That's
And I'm probably
ridiculous.
going to
Yeah.
get some Molotov cocktails thrown through my office window by saying this, but the reality is the productivity is so bad, and we're at the low point in permit applications.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
things are supposed to be accelerated, how much longer is it going to take? And I bring up this point because the reality is, Lambros, if an investor wants to invest in real estate, they need assurances that it'll take a certain amount of time to get their permits, because waiting 4 permits while you have trades ready to work, capital ready to be used, it's going to cause problems. People are just going to say, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know how the federal government's going to solve this, because the NIMBYism in the city is so
Yeah.
bad that nothing will ever get built.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good point as well, because I think I mentioned that the federal government is dangling this infrastructure fund over the provinces and kind of given them an ultimatum. I think they recently gave Ontario an ultimatum that, use it or lose it kind of thing, get it done. And then the Ontario housing minister fired back and saying, well, we're waiting on the municipal side or something like that. We're not getting enough done there. So they're passing the buck and nothing's getting done, right? So
Well, I'm going to give you
it seems to, yeah.
I'm going to give you a real story,
Okay.
a real life example of how ineffective municipal government is. There's an organization called Create TO. Their mandate is to develop lands that has been handed over to them for high density and building homes. Now, I drive out onto Wilson Heights from my home, in between Shepherd and Wilson, and I drive out of my community and I face a 57-acre parcel of land that's zoned for high density and was handed over to Create TO in 2009. It's 15 years ago. Okay. This parcel of land is in between Downsview subway station and Wilson subway station. It hugs Allen Road, and it's maybe a driver away from the 401.
Yeah.
Okay.
So prime territory, right?
Prime urban space for about 3,000 to 3,500 units. Lambros, there's not a shovel in the fucking ground. Okay, excuse my language. But
All good.
there are executives sitting on the Create TO board that make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing nothing. There have been 3 community consultation meetings in 15 years.
Wow.
Okay?
Unbelievable.
And they want to not open up the Greenbelt because there's space in the city to use infrastructure. 15 years?
So do you know if any plans have been submitted for this land?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've sat in the meetings in the community consultation programs.
Wow.
That they've done. And this is NIMBYs fighting it.
Right.
This is people not wanting it, okay, for whatever personal reason. Okay. Nothing will get built.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Okay? And anybody who thinks that this government at any level wants to get it done, say what you will about the province, they're trying, but the municipalities are slow as molasses.
And the councillors have no desire to do anything because they don't want to go against their constituents, right? So.
And this is the problem. I think we have to start at term limits.
Right.
At all levels of government. Maybe it's 3 terms. Hey, if you're a municipal councillor and you want to stay in politics, you want to be a career politician, maybe you got to move up from the municipality to the province.
Right.
Maybe you got to move down from the province to the municipality, or move up to the federal level if you want to be a career politician. But God, please, these incumbents, you cannot get rid of them. Okay? Because they are so tied to communities that all they do is stop progress. We're the only city in the Western world where you could come out of a subway and see single family homes.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, great points as always. And but before we leave the builder incentive discussion, there is that construction loan that's part of this budget as well, right? So, and that's it's good that it's a loan. At least it's not going to cost the taxpayers anymore. There's also the capital cost allowance that they're increasing it from 4% to 10%. So hopefully that will incentivize some builders. They're extending the GST exemption to student residences, and I know you've been a proponent of that as well, for universities to build their own residences on campus versus taking up space for actual families and renters. So they're extending the GST exemption there. And then there's also the 30-year amortization for new builds, right? Extending to first-time home buyers. But that's a curious one to me. And correct me if I'm wrong, because most new builds already require a 20% deposit. So wouldn't they qualify for a 30-year am anyway? So how much incentive is that? I'm not sure. Right.
Well, usually the first-time buyers take advantage of the CMHC program, right,
Okay.
which is less than 20%. So
okay.
I'm interested to see how many builders are going to take on a buyer that's only got 5% down or 10% down.
Right.
When
right.
they don't fit that deposit schedule, what happens?
Yeah, exactly. Because the theory there, I guess, is that if more people are able to buy, then that would incentivize the builders to actually build, because they can't build without sales, right? So, but yeah, that's a good point, actually. I mean, at 5% down, I'm not sure if that's going to help either.
You know what's interesting, Lambros, is you need some people at the table that have skin in the game and are in the weeds every day dealing with stuff. And
Mhm.
like, think about this. They introduced a first home savings account, which I think is very good. There's 750,000 people that took
Yeah.
advantage of it. And they have to accumulate that account over a 5-year period at $8,000 a
Yeah.
year. It's 40,000, right? So that's a good idea. So it pushes people off from buying for 5 years.
Right.
They could save some money. Now think about the RSP program. They've enhanced that and allowed people to withdraw up to 60,000.
Correct.
So now people are going to sacrifice the retirement for potential home ownership.
But not only that, like, what first-time home buyer has 60K already locked up in an RSP anyway? So,
Well,
kind of like a pointless extension.
if you're postponing the purchase for 5 years under the first savings account, you're
Okay.
kind of maybe
Oh, I
helping
see.
them
Okay.
achieve
Gotcha.
it, right? So you're
Gotcha.
postponing.
Yeah.
So now let's think about this for a
Yeah.
minute. So you want to push people to buy new construction, because that 30-year amortization only applies if they buy new construction, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you integrate all the programs so that people feel that, okay, all these little things are adding up, and maybe say to them, hey, if you buy new construction, we will carve out all the input taxes, development charges, parkland dedication fees, HSD charge, everything that governments charge that new development, which is almost 30% of the purchase price.
Yeah.
So let's say you got a $1 million home, I'm just using this for an example, and 30% of it is input taxes. And you say to a new buyer, if you take advantage of the first buyer's program account, the first savings account, an RSP withdrawal, we will carve out all the input taxes as a promissory note where you don't pay interest on that, okay? Because remember, that new buyer has to pay interest on all those input taxes that are built into the cost of the home.
That's right.
And say that $300,000 will be a non-interest note that will add on there, and we'll forgive 1/15 of it every year if you're paying back your RSP. So you integrate all the programs, and you have to stay in that home for 15 years. Okay, so you eliminate the flipping and people moving up. You create sound communities amongst first-time buyers that could all kind of buy into the program. And now all of a sudden, you're not letting somebody pay interest on taxes that have been inputted into the cost of the purchase price, and you forgive them for the amount of time they stay in that unit. Like, integrate a program so that you're helping people, but now you're incentivizing builders to build homes for first-time buyers because there's an incentive just for them.
Mm.
And I don't know if there's enough bandwidth in the government to come up with a plan like that, but I think it would be a lot more fruitful and accommodate both ends of the spectrum, both supply and demand, for this type of program. So, you know,
Yeah.
as it stands, I just don't see anything improving.
Wow. No, that's a great point, actually, especially about having people such as not you personally, but in your industry, in your profession, to give the feds or whoever the government some input as to what is actually required, because I don't know who they're listening to and how they're coming up with these ideas, but you know, those ideas are great for sure. Um, I wanted to ask you about the mortgage fraud thing, because now I was surprised to hear that. I mean, the idea for me, on a surface level, is good that there's going to be a connection to the CRA to verify income. But I'm surprised this wasn't in existence before. So as of now, when you get mortgage documents, there's no avenue for you to verify this income from CRA.
Today, no. We do take into account some training on what to look
Mhm.
for in the documents, certain fonts, you know, who's signing the NOA. You know, there's always a commissioner of
Wow.
CRA that signs it. So we know who the commissioner is that's signing off on these things based on the dates it's produced.
Okay.
Um, but you know, you're validating through multiple sources. You're validating through accounts to see what the pay is going into somebody's
Okay.
account from the employer. You're trying to get T4s. You're trying to get letters. You're trying to validate it with the employer.
Okay.
There's a number of different steps you take. But you know, a good friend of mine, Ron Butler's been on this case for a while, and he's sat on committees in Ottawa trying to push this point for a considerable amount of time.
Mm.
He's been beating this drum for a while. So I'm glad it's coming. Whether or not it'll be implemented anytime soon is another story.
Yeah.
But the reality is it's finally on the radar. And
Well,
you know, there
yeah.
was an RCMP report a number of years ago that indicated that mortgage fraud attributed on estimate 7 to 8% inflation on the value of homes, because there's people that are eager to buy these things with fraudulent
Yeah.
mortgage financing,
Yeah.
and drove the price on bidding wars up and
100%.
values homes. So
Yeah.
I think it's long overdue. I'm surprised this government has sat on its hands over it.
Yeah.
But you know, I
Well, I'm
guess for some
surprised it
people,
hasn't been in existence before. Like you said, I mean, T4s and NOAs and whatever, those are all fine, but they can be forged, right? Any kind of paperwork can be forged. So unless you have the
the left
verification
links.
from,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So
So
we'll see how that works out. I'm embracing it when
good.
it comes in. I think it'll
Yeah.
make life easier, and will eliminate the bad characters in the space.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. What about this new approaches to home building? They're talking about allowing modular homes, 3D printing, and all. It's like, do you think that's going to help speed up the construction phase of these things? Do you think that's a viable path?
I think any new technology that's being implemented would be well received.
Okay.
I think if it can help speed up the process, I think that's a plus, and I think it has to be celebrated and encouraged. But you know, when you put up new taxes for
Mhm.
businesses to that impedes their investment in this,
Yeah.
one has to ask, why should I? What's incenting me to invest in these technologies if I'm just going to get taxed at a higher rate than I was prior to this
Yeah.
budget? Like I said, there's a lot of hypocrisy
Yeah.
in this budget. It's sucking and
Yeah.
blowing, and I'm not sure, but it does push people from trades into salary jobs. And if there's one thing I've learned about this government over the last 8 years is they're not big fans of self-employed people.
Yeah.
They're always hitting them over the head. They vilified them. They tried that during the Murnau, when he was Minister of Finance, and then they had to scale back on some of those pledges. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out. I think what it does is it's helping rental units and affordable housing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that appeals to everybody. And will the home ownership dream move to an aspiration to not have a roommate as a renter?
Yeah. I think it already has. And so.
So I feel bad. I got three young adults, children,
Yeah.
and they always look at a magnet I have on my fridge about what the prices of homes and income were in 1970, which is the year I was born.
Okay.
And they say, Dad, you only need 2 years worth of income to buy a home in 1970. What's the deal with that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the unfairness of where we are today for these young folks. They don't have a lot of hope. And we got to work on getting that back. And we need governments at all levels to think of this as a generational and a long-term approach to solving this thing. It cannot be done on an election term basis.
I agree.
And that's what we're seeing on a regular basis at all fronts.
Sure. Can you imagine the capital gains tax on that house built in 1970 if they go to sell it today?
Yeah, and I think this is the sad thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you need a landlord to house these renters, and if you're not incenting them to build these things, where are these people going to live?
That's true.
So we might have to go back to the concept that Kramer had in Seinfeld, where he had all his Japanese friends living in those
The drawers.
beds.
Absolutely, Seinfeld classic. So switching gears here a little bit, because the budget wasn't the only announcement that came out yesterday. StatsCan also came out with their inflation numbers, and it sneaked up a little bit to 2.9%, but that's mostly due to gas and as well as shelter costs like mortgage interest. So it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy here that the Bank of Canada is doing. And I know you don't like making predictions. I'm not going to put you on the spot either, but I did have a question from one of my viewers saying, what would it take for the BOC or Bank of Canada to cut rates in June? Like, what does Bank of Canada want to see before they cut rates, in your opinion?
Well, this budget isn't going to make them happy because they are simply spending at will.
Okay.
And the amount of spending that is in this budget is only going to put fuel on the fire, and inflation will remain sticky. Back in November, December, I was asked many times where I thought rates were going to go, and my prediction was that I think we're going to be closer to 5 than 4 by the end of this year, as far as where the Bank of Canada is.
Okay.
And without a movement to date and nothing pending, I think my prediction's looking pretty good, that we're going to be closer to 5 than 4.
Okay.
So I think rates are going to be high for a while.
Right.
I think the socialist agenda is very, very dangerous. And I remember a quote by Margaret Thatcher. She said, the problem with socialism is that eventually you run out of people's money to spend.
Oh, gosh. Wow. That's true.
And I think everything is going up. We're seeing more and more Canadians facing mortgage renewals, and their payments are going up. Disposable income is getting less. Carbon taxes are going up. And I think people are just getting tired. They say 8 out of 10 households get a rebate check.
Right.
8 out of 10 people that come visit me are mad, sad, and angry. And that's real. That's something I see every day. I think people are at their wits' end. They're running out of money before they run out of month.
Yeah.
and they're struggling
Yeah.
because of the high cost of things. And I'm really skeptical about StatsCan's CPI figure, Lambros.
Okay.
I'm concerned because the 8 components that make up the basket in the CPI index changes. The weighting changes on an annual basis, and it really is manipulated,
Sure.
and I don't trust it.
Fair
And
enough.
in the time where 0.1% could impose confidence for
Yeah.
consumers, they're playing with those numbers. And I'll give you an example. The transportation component has ranged about 4%.
Mm-hmm.
It went from almost 20% of the basket in 2020 in 2019
Right.
to 16%, 15.96, I think, in
Right.
2024.
Right.
Now, you would think, okay, well, you know what? It should be less in 2020 because during COVID, nobody was driving. And
It's
now
true. Yes.
everybody's back on the road. It should represent more. But the actual opposite happened. It was less in 2020, and now it's more,
I see. Well,
right?
have they added or deleted any components in that basket? Like what makes up
They're
this basket?
changing it all the time,
Changing
right?
all the time. Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
where the inconsistency
Right.
is a concern to me,
Mm.
because even housing's moved about a point and a half
Yeah.
from about 30 to 28 and a half.
Yeah.
And it was 30 when rates were low.
Right.
It's 28 and a half when rates are high. That doesn't make a
Right.
lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It does sound fishy.
So,
But
I'm not sure why, and I'm sure there's a math nerd out there that's going to explain why that happens, and that's okay.
yeah,
But I
yeah,
think
sure.
people should just be aware that that number is
Certainly.
BS,
Okay.
right? Because every basket's different, and
Well, fair
everybody is
enough.
facing challenges, and it's a concern. And I think people should be skeptical on that. And I really think that inflation is going to be really sticky over the next few months, and
Yeah.
I don't see any drop until later in the year, if at all.
Okay. So when it does come time to cut rates, what do you think? Because the question was, what would it take for the Bank of Canada to drop these rates? Like, let's say they maintain it in June, they maintain it in July. Like, what does Bank of Canada want to see before they cut rates, in your opinion?
The sad thing is they need a lot of bad things to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
They need job losses to mount.
Yeah.
Um, and if you look at all the job data, the majority of it is in the public sector, right? And Canadians are getting tired of the fact that our public service is producing less than it was,
Yeah.
and it's growing by 30, 40%.
Right.
So we need job losses. We're starting to see businesses cutting jobs, cutting hours.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really interesting is the amount of average hours worked. That's been coming down, and the reason why it's been coming down is employers have had such a hard time finding good employees that they're reluctant to let them go. So
That's right.
they're reducing their overtime hours, reducing their hours,
That's
and
right.
hanging on.
Yeah.
But if revenues start going down, you're going to start seeing people getting laid off and jobs cut. And we're starting to see, little stories of 60, 70 people losing jobs here and that.
Yeah.
Bell just dropped, I don't
Yeah.
know how many thousands of workers. They were
But
on
unemployment has
a
gone up.
committee about it.
Right. Unemployment has gone up. So you're saying it needs to go up even more before.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And
That's
they want that inflation to get
Yeah.
closer to 2%.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sad for sure.
And when you have all this spending, it's only going to cause inflation to go up.
That's exactly it. Wow. Okay, cool. So we've been here 45 minutes, Vince. I don't want to take up too much more of your
Oh,
time.
listen, I booked you for an hour, so
Excellent.
you got me for an hour. It's okay.
Excellent. Excellent. Is there something else that you wanted to discuss then before we go?
You know what I always encourage people to do is just be ready for what's coming.
Okay.
It's going to be tough. I always use the phrase tighten the chin strap on your helmets. It's going to get bumpy.
Yeah.
I really encourage people to look at their bank statements and credit card statements and print them out. I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen over the years is people have moved to electronic statements, and they're relying on their phone to tell them what transactions are going through their account. They really only see 4 to 6 on their screen at a time.
That's right.
Print out your statements, print out your credit card statements, and focus in on stuff that you don't need. There's price subscriptions and charges on there that you probably aren't even aware of. You probably let your kids use your credit card, and they're probably purchasing stuff that are $4, $7, $8, $12 that really don't make a lot of sense, and it's not enough for you to care.
Yeah.
But when you look at them in a month, it could add up to hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I really encourage people to focus on the needs, get rid of the wants, and really buckle down, because the next 12 to 18 months is going to be a struggle, especially those that are facing renewals. And if you do need any help with renewals, we're happy to help out. We're happy to help negotiate them for you and try to find some savings in your budget to give you a hand.
Awesome. So where can people reach you, Vince? What's the best way to contact you?
owlmortgage.ca, or you could call me at the office. You could DM me at Vince G Mortgage on Instagram. We got the YouTube podcast now launched. That is, I'm really excited about. And just email me at vince@owlmortgage.ca, and I'd be happy to help out.
And what's the name of the podcast?
The Wise Old Owl Podcast.
Nice. Okay, good.